We have a panel discussion on the data center sector, especially its enormous electricity use and what we can do to better manage it. We'll have 4 short talks by the panelists and then a longer session of Q&A and discussion. We would like to encourage this discussion, so after all the panelists have finished speaking, we'll ask people with questions or comments to raise their hand with that reaction icon at the bottom of the screen and wait to be called on. So these 4 talks comprise 3 parts. First, Betsy Longendorfer will speak on the electric grid, its reliability, and its pricing, since any data center's electricity use now has an effect on all of us. Then Steve Miller will talk more specifically about data centers' impacts on us and our environment and suggest some actions that can be taken to manage it. Then we'll dive into other issues with data centers that are more local, including noise and air pollution, water usage, and its effects on the local community, with case examples of a proposed project in central New Jersey near Princeton, where Kip Cherry has been a leading part of the opposition, and another proposed data center expansion project in Orangetown, New York, right across the street from Bergen County residents. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and let Betsy. Let me introduce Betsy first. Betsy Longendorfer is a retired electrical and computer engineer who is active on the Sierra Club's Building Electrification Committee and also as a New Jersey electrification coach. She writes a Substack to help individuals make their own lifestyle more sustainable. It's called climatefriendlylifestyle.substack.com. And maybe after she finishes, she can put that in the chat. She's speaking on the basics of electricity pricing. We'll pause at the end of this talk and take a couple of clarification questions if there are any at that time. So now I will stop the share and let Betsy share hers. Okay, Betsy, this is yours, right?
Let me just do it.
Okay, I want to share. Okay. You can see my screen, my slides?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to be quiet.
Okay, I'm going to introduce you to a few basic concepts about the electric grid and how pricing is set, so you can understand the actions and the solutions that are being proposed by the next speaker. Note that there's an article on our New Jersey Electrification Coaching Substack site that covers this material in a little more detail, and we'll drop that into the chat. Okay. All right, PJM, standing for Pennsylvania, Jersey, Maryland, manages your power. PJM is the organization, is one of the RTOs, the regional transmission organizations. The RTOs were established when energy was deregulated in the 1990s. You may have heard news stories about other RTOs, such as ERCOT in Texas, CAISO in California, or New York's ISO, or New England's ISO New England. PJM is composed of 13 states, and all of the utility companies here in New Jersey are part of that, PSE&G, JCP&L, etc. And they get their power from the PJM grid. All right, so your bill is divided into approximately 40% and 60%. 40% is the cost to deliver energy to you. That part is regulated by the New Jersey BPU. And while that is also increasing, it's not the current cause of the major jumps in rates. And about 60% of your bill is the actual cost of energy, which is managed by PJM and is determined by auctions. That is the part that's going up, and we'll see why. So the 60% supply cost is further divided into 2 parts: the actual energy that is purchased on a daily basis, and also payments for capacity to the energy suppliers who are paid to stand by in case they're needed. You can make an analogy with emergency room doctors. They're paid a salary to stand by in case they're needed, and you pay for insurance in case you need it. That's similar to capacity payments. Then when you actually need a doctor, you pay additional money for their specific services, and that's similar to buying the energy that you actually use. Typically, only a small part of your bill is for capacity, about 15%, and then 75% for the actual energy, 10% for other services, but not recently. Note that the prices for capacity and for energy are both determined by auctions. There's a yearly one for capacity to cover the fixed costs of energy generation, for example, for plant depreciation. There's also a daily one for the operating costs on producing the energy you use. And there's some real-time energy auctions held as often as every 5 minutes. So let's see how these energy auctions work. So while this diagram's a little bit complicated, the main idea is really simple. It's a basic auction of supply and demand. So various power suppliers bid how much energy they can supply and at what price. So the yellow bidder bid $20 to supply 300 megawatts. The orange one bid $30 for 300 megawatts. The pink one for 50 and the 75 and the 300, the blue one for $75. And they're stacked up in order of increasing price. Then PJM goes ahead and makes a forecast of how much energy is actually needed. And that's called the demand or the load, and that's that black bar. So PJM auctions have to keep buying energy until they have enough to match the demand. So they buy the least expensive first, and they buy until they reach the amount of demand they need. And in this case, the demand puts you right in the middle of the pink region, which means the energy costs $50. Now, here's where something is unexpected and possibly a problem. All the suppliers are paid the $50, even the ones who didn't, who bid less. And this is called the marginal market clearing offer. Now, what happens if there's more demand? In other words, if this black bar is taller, then it may extend into the to the $75 region, so you may pay more, or they may still be in this region. Or what happens if a new energy supplier, a new less expensive energy supplier, maybe solar, comes along with a $25 price and inserts themselves right in here? It pushes everything else up the stack so that maybe your demand now is could be still in the $50 region, or maybe it's in the $30 region. So new supply will possibly affect the price. These auctions are very sensitive to supply and demand. So let's look at what's happening in the real world of PJM auctions. So here's the forecast from PJM's actual website for how much demand is going to increase over the next few years. You don't really need to understand math too well to see that it's got a pretty steep curve there, and they're forecasting a lot more energy that is needed. And of course, a lot of this is due to data centers. So of course, one question right off is, how accurate is this forecast? And the next speaker may address this issue. In fact, it's estimated that about 40% of the auction pricing is due to data center loads which haven't been built yet. So another question is, why are we paying that now? Shouldn't the builder pay for it and then have his costs amortized over the years when he's actually selling energy to us? Again, the next speaker may address that. So there was a news flash from yesterday, actually. PJM has decreased some of its forecasts a little bit by 1 to 2.5%, so I don't think that's going to be a lot, but it should help a little. So to summarize, what you should get out of this slide is forecast demand is skyrocketing. So now we looked at the demand side, let's look at the supply side. So you can see that there's a graph down here of capacity in gigawatts. You can see that there's good news and bad news. So the good news is that this is the actual capacity this is the actual, actual amount of energy that PJM has and is using right now. And this is the amount of energy that's in the queue where people have asked to build this much new energy. So the good news is that across the board for every RTO, you can see that the amount in the proposed supply queue is bigger than a lot bigger than what they're using right now. That's great. And also, much of the proposed supply in the queue is renewable energy. So this is kind of a complicated chart, but you don't really have to understand a lot of it. The point is here, I just wanted to show you there's a lot of proposed uh, energy supply in the queue. And this is just the renewable supply that's in the queue. And by the way, go New Jersey. Um, you don't need to look at this in detail, but I had a couple of other notes. Building solar is a lot faster and cheaper than building a gas plant. And one of the issues in approving a project so it can move from this proposed part to actual supply is that it requires a study of whether transmission line upgrades are needed. Remember that other portion of the bid about distribution? That's where that comes from. Okay, so now the bad news. Here's a chart that shows how the queue of proposed supply is being built in PJM. So if you look at 2015, you look up here, it says a project that was completed in 2015 spent about 2 years in the queue. And so now you look at 2024, and a project that was completed in 2024 spent almost 6 years in the queue. Um, there's been a lot of pressure on PJM in the last year to reverse this trend because, and they've instituted some fast tracking of projects, although much of the approved supply was natural gas. But this is another area where much more could be done. And perhaps the next speaker will touch on this as well. So what happened with the supply and demand that we just discussed? Um, This law of supply and demand ruled because of skyrocketing demand forecasts and little additional supply. The capacity auction actually went up by a factor of 10. And the recent auction, which isn't shown here, was also in the same ballpark. And that's why your bills went up. So I just want to switch topics slightly. So we explained supply and demand and the pricing, but there's another way to manipulate the pricing. Uh, and this is my last slide. So this graph is affectionately called the duck curve. So you can see the duck right here. It's a graph of energy demand over the course of a day. So overnight, there's a pretty steady small demand. And you follow this blue line up, and you can see as people are waking up in the morning and going off to work, the demand increases slightly, and there's a slight decrease during the afternoon. And then people go home from work, and the demand skyrockets again. People are turning on lights at home, they're turning up the heat or the air conditioning, they're cooking dinner, etc. So this is when the peak energy usage during a day happens. Now remember when we talked about that daily auction? You have to buy enough energy to pay for the peak load of energy during that day. So if you can decrease this peak, then you can potentially save a lot of money because you don't have to buy that expensive energy at the top of the auction. There are definitely techniques to do this, including battery storage, smart thermostats, and other techniques, which the next speaker may touch on. So now you brand new energy experts will be debating policies with the best of them. So Steve Miller is going to talk to you about some of these possible policy changes that will help rein in the runaway energy pricing.
Okay, thank you, Betsy. I had told people that we would take a couple of questions if you have something about just what Betsy has talked about. So if you do, then there's I think it's the React Let me see.
Okay. It says one of them is why does it take so long to get new supply into the system, the outdated transmission system? I think that's the $64,000 question. There are many answers to this question. Some of from PJM hasn't put a lot of effort into it is one answer, but also the transmission system does have to be upgraded. And there's also the algorithm they use to evaluate the projects. They used to take them in the order in which they entered the queue, first in, first out. And now they've switched the algorithm to where they take the first one that is ready is the first one that they'll look at. So that makes more sense, and maybe that will help things along. But because there are transmission bottlenecks too, just because you can, one project that is connected may affect projects behind it that now don't have enough transmission space. So, there are other issues as far as siting and whatever. I don't know, Steve, are you going to talk about this at all?
Well, I probably won't, but I do have some expertise because I've sat in as one of the observing member of a fast track committee that was trying to look at getting things faster in PJM, and there's a lot of inertia. This PJM is enormous. They've had structure in place forever. Everything's done by the book, and that's the way to do it. So what we want is for them to start to increase the speed, and we'll see what happens.
So a couple things. Can't we buy power from other systems? No. It has to get here. It has to go through the PJM transmission system. So.
Well,
Yes,
there is local power. We can generate our own solar or buy community solar.
But it still comes from here. It still comes from within PJM or from your own generation. Yeah.
Mike started to say something.
you can buy power from anywhere, but you have to pay for the freight to come through PJM. So you can buy wind from Texas, but you have to pay that freight, the transmission charge, to get from Texas to New Jersey through PJM. So it doesn't come just at the cost of electricity. You have to pay for that transmission cost. So it ends up not being that cost effective.
Someone asked if the slides would be available, and yes, we will be sending all the slides out afterwards.
So there was a question I'd like to help answer. Aren't there also grid and transmission issues as well? The answer is yes. For everything that gets connected, there's a careful study of how that thing has to be supported. And that takes time. And then you got to buy the pieces and install them. It takes time. So there's a lot of things that delay new generation from getting on.
Okay, why don't we go on to the next person, who will be Steve Miller, and let me share my screen. All right.
Thank you, Pat. I can see the first slide.
I know, I'm trying to get to the second one. Okay,
There we
I
go.
found it.
Okay, so I'm going to cover.
Let me introduce you.
Sure.
Steve is a retired electrical engineer also, with over 30 years in the telephony research and development. He's also the chair, as you probably know, of several environmental organizations, and has been organizing these building electrification webinars now for 4 years. So he will speak more directly about data centers, their proliferation and impacts, and give some suggestions about what is being done to rein in the worst impacts and how we can get involved. So Steve, you're asked to speak up, so please try to do that.
Okay. So today I'm going to cover data center legislation and government policy issues mostly, but I'm open to questions and anything. I'd like to start on a personal note, and this slide is very personal. I wanted to see the end of electric bill escalation caused by large data centers, and I just got this bill a week or two ago, $450 for the month of December, the highest I've ever seen. And the average outdoor temperature was only 1 degree colder this year compared to a year ago. And this confirms the reality of a 20% electric increase, which we experienced, mostly in an all-electric house. This includes the $10 debit that we have to pay to handle the 2025 monthly bill reductions that each of us received. And regretfully, the June 2026 auction is likely to further increase this electric bill. But the good news is, as Betsy mentioned, yesterday's 2026 PJM latest load forecast for 2026 and beyond reduced the forecast by 1.6% for 2026. And Betsy also described the hair trigger prices during PJM auctions. So we may find that small reduction lowered our electric bills in the June 2026 auction. And I hope that opens so we avoid an otherwise all-time high. Next slide. I'm going to cover proposed and actual data center legislation in Virginia, Oregon, and New Jersey. This shows the beginning of our Virginia portion. In 2025, Sierra Club Virginia chapter completed a very thorough review of totaling about 60 pages of Virginia's growing crisis. It's driven by the rapid expansion of unregulated data centers. And this is an unprecedented strain on Virginia's energy grid, land, and water resources, and the health of the local communities. And my goal is that New Jersey not repeat Virginia's mistakes. The rapid growth of data centers in Virginia produces consequences unaddressed by state policies. They have the world's highest concentration of data centers. They currently are nearing 400 million square feet of buildings in data centers, and that unchecked expansion is expected to triple. 55% of data centers in some areas are within 200 feet of homes. Many of those data centers are really noisy. Many areas of the state have severe water loss because a data center can consume 5 million gallons per day. But data centers are very secretive about anything having to do with their business, and they hide data like this under non-disclosure agreements. Next slide. Energy demand will soon reach 60 gigawatts, equal to 68 coal plants. Gas now is being generated by the notorious Mountain Valley Pipeline. Air quality and nearby residents' health will be affected by data center use of the cheapest, most highly polluting diesel generators, especially when a couple dozen or more of these turn on at the same time. And electric prices are rapidly increasing. Next slide. So state and local policymakers have largely failed to enact adequate oversight in Virginia. The lack of transparency, minimal environmental protection, and unchecked tax incentives have created a regulatory race to the bottom to attract data centers. Next. So enough of the bad news. What can we do about it? These are recommendations for immediate policy intervention. We must ensure that data centers pay their own way for their own infrastructure and bring their own renewable energy. We want states and counties who are so often eager for data centers, they want them to quit battling against each other. Right now, some of them provide enormous tax exemptions. We need an emphasis on building efficient, renewable facilities. And water use restrictions are a major problem. We need to impose limits on data center water consumption to preserve our local water. Next. And we need strong environmental protection and require sustainable energy and stricter emission controls on backup generators. We need stronger zoning and land use oversight to keep noisy data centers away from quiet residential zones. We need to have full disclosure of energy and water use, emission data, expansion plans, and accurate financial information to ensure ratepayers are not subsidizing data centers. Next. The problems I just described in Virginia are also affecting New Jersey and Oregon. The top talks about Oregon. Yesterday, we reviewed Oregon's progress and legislation. They recently passed the Power Act, which they bill as the first of a suite of data center bills. The Oregon Public Utilities Commission will create a rate class for large loads so the PUC can track all the costs and ensure data centers pay costs of infrastructure and services. So normal electric customers receive normal electric bills. And the PUC will monitor and report all data on their large loads. But back home in New Jersey, the first part of this bill that was just approved by an all-important Senate and Budget and Appropriations Committee first authorizes the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities to create a tariff for large loads to ensure that all costs are tracked and paid by large loads and not paid by you and me. And other parts of the bill also, this bill provide more support for the future of the environment. Next. Our national headquarters of Sierra Club applied their best lawyers to recommend 2026 data center state policies. And these are areas that should be included in state bills. This came out yesterday, at least we got a copy yesterday. And the link to this 11-page document is shown at the bottom of the slide for whoever wants to have this nice summary. The topics mesh with those we have just discussed. We need to protect ratepayers by creating large load tariffs or rate classes to track all costs. We need to enforce state clean energy laws, such as New Jersey Current Renewable Portfolio Standard, and require data centers to bring their own clean energy. We need to keep a fair, level playing field instead of regions outbidding each other on tax and utility rebates, and protect our residents' health by enforcing our cumulative impact laws and air permits. So hooray for us for covering the biggest issues here to control data centers, permits, and restrictions. I'm stopping and asking, are there any questions?
Steve, I have one question. This is
Sure.
so like you can ask them about clean energy. I'm talking about data center. They can use clean energy and land and maybe possibly work on air pollution. But how can they protect water? How can we restrict them to use water? Water is like they cannot generate water. Water is, as somebody
There's
said,
ways to reuse water, like if you have effectively air conditioners that take the hot water. Water is used increasingly, in fact, probably exclusively now for the highest power AI chips. And they're designed to be immersed in water. And so the hot water comes out of them. And right now, the easiest way for a company to get rid of the heat is to put it into big towers and spray it in the air and have evaporated heat reduction. And a better way to preserve water would be closed cycle, where they can use effectively air conditioner, the heat pumps, to take away that heat from the water, to cool off the heat. So, but it's more expensive.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Howard?
Yes. The insanity of this is, why is there suddenly such an increase in demand, and that everybody is tripping over themselves to put up more systems in the next 10 minutes? And then the next question is this make any sense to you?
Yeah, I can see that makes sense, because what they're doing is creating artificial intelligence data centers. They're focusing on AI. And it starts at the top. The first of the year, last year, Donald Trump said the highest priority is to get these AIs underway, invest a whole bunch of money, and make the United States the most productive country in the world by using AI to improve ourselves. And that sort of concept is what everybody's doing. All the big companies are doing this, and they're all investing in AI. The AI runs on data centers. There's tremendous demand for AI by every company to use for their employees. It's running on data centers. And the data centers are compacting more and more high-powered chips, especially designed for AI. And they have to be cooled off or they would burn up. So that's the big factor in using water to cool them up.
Mike has a
cool them.
question.
So,
Yes.
so yes, we see the problem, and the problem is us because we're all using more data. But some of these projects are speculative. They're going to New Jersey and saying, I want a site here. They're going to Virginia. They're going to Maryland to see if they can get the best deal. That all gets pulled up by the local utility and then gets pulled up to the load forecast by PJM. So part of this has been, let's get better data from the very beginning with the utilities, with distribution, integrated distribution planning to understand what's happening now and what's happening into the future with the load. And as that comes up, are these data centers being double counted? So that's also part of the issue that we're trying to get our arms around as we do this. So.
Yes,
And-
I'm hoping that the integrated data planning actually, you mentioned earlier those are actually laws or policies we have, but they're not being carried forward by by the BPU who'd enforce it. So I hope that
A
comes to
lot of it
fruition.
is speculative. So the cities and towns are vying to get these centers into their property tax system, their ratables. So they want them to come, um, and sometimes the companies will forecast in two different areas because they don't know which one is going to approve them. So we don't really know until we get what Steve called the integrated forecasting that they're real forecasts. I'm going to go on to the next talk. Let me see if I can get there. Okay, and the speaker is Kip Cherry, who has almost 50 years of experience in environmental analysis and urban planning. Kip is a licensed New Jersey professional planner and a certified member of the American Institute of Certified Planners, AICP. Her primary focus includes the protection of environmentally sensitive sites. She's been a leader of the opposition to a proposed data center in Middlesex County, New Jersey. So you're on, Kip.
Okay, Pat, thank you very much. So what I'm going to do is look at more specifically a real case that's beyond the issue of just energy, but also has a lot of environmental issues that need to be of concern to the local community. So this is now called the Sentinel Data Center. It's located in South Brunswick on Route 1. And this is the maybe the third or fourth year we've been involved in it, but this is where we are right now. Next slide. Okay, so you can see the site encircled in yellow, and you see over on the left is the Millstone River and the canal park, the Delaware River Canal Park. And on the right side, you see Route 1. And you can see some activities right along Route 1. Those are 3 hotels: Hampton Inn, a Sonesta, and a Doubletree. And somebody's written here that it's already started. Yes, it started construction. We're sort of catching up by appealing and challenging, but yes, it started construction, we believe, without all of its permits. So on the upper side, you can see some of the lots where people actually live, and they are all objecting to this. And then you can see that there are a lot of wetlands in the area. And then you can see these 2 eyebrows. And those 2 eyebrows are made up of contaminated soil containing dieldrin, which is a very bad pesticide that was used on the property before all this occurred. This part was part of the property belonging to Princeton Nurseries, and Princeton University came along and bought a lot of it. But when they found out that there was dieldrin on this property, they decided to sell it to somebody else. Next. So this abuts a PSE&G substation. You can see the station just tucked in next to the yellow border there behind the hotels. And nobody really knew what was going on when that substation was moving forward. So there's been a real lack of transparency as things have evolved. The data center is supposed to have 3 shifts of 100 people each. It does everything as far as we can tell, Bitcoin, AI, machine learning, everything. It's going to be a very busy place because of all these people coming in and out, and a lot more employees than one would typically think for a data center. It's going to have transformers, 21 chillers, 12 regularly tested generators. It says 18, but it's really 12. At full load using 140 gallons per hour of diesel fuel, and will have large diesel tanks. And there'll be 113 parking spaces to accommodate all of the employees. Next. Okay, so originally there was an agreement with Princeton University and DEP because Princeton University was holding the bag with all of that pesticide. And so the remediation was done back in the 80s with Princeton University involved. And in those days, and unfortunately in these days, the regulations on contaminated remediation are extremely loose, if you can use that word. All you have to do is have an LSRP, a licensed site remediation professional supervising in your employ. You're paying for it, not DEP. And whatever this person tells DEP is happening and how they believe that everything is hunky-dory, DEP seems to buy it. And so there's nobody watching the store. So you can see again those eyebrows. And the agreement was that the eyebrows, well, first of all, they were created and then they were covered with a geotextile. And the notion was that that would be regularly inspected to make sure that there were no holes in it and that the berms remained stable. And so Princeton University agreed to that, and there's a biennial certification requirement related to that. Exactly where that is now, we're not really clear because Princeton University, even though it's a deed restriction, Princeton University sold the property. It's not as clear to us as to what kind of monitoring is really going on. Next. So this is a picture showing the Tyvek and the berms. And the new owner that bought it from Princeton University got the idea that they would plant trees in the berm, which would help to hide what was going on behind the berms and allow the neighbors to relax and not worry. That was the whole concept. And so they created these big holes in the geotextile and planted trees. And, you know, we raised objections with DEP. What's going on here? This is not a good idea. The geotextile should not be penetrated. And they didn't seem to be concerned. The LSRP thinks it's okay. Why are you guys worried about it? And so the soil was piled up on the PSE&G property by error. And PSE&G got very excited about that and said it needed to disappear. And so it did. And we're really not sure where that contaminated soil went. The contaminated soil contains dieldrin. Next. So this is the site showing Heathcote Brook, which you can't see on some other maps so easily. The stormwater system will be connecting, or is connecting, to Heathcote Brook, which goes through the site and has some tributaries to it, and ends up hooking to the Millstone River. It goes actually underneath the canal park and hooks to the Millstone River, and we're concerned about whether there's a contaminated material ending up in the river. So we're still working on that issue, and I have now found a place that has sampling data, and we'll see, you know, how that turns out. Okay, next. So there was a development plan at the beginning. This is when some of the neighbors started to get involved. We didn't know about it. So a lot of decisions were made at that time, particularly regarding remediation. There are two sections. One is the data center section, which is in South Brunswick, and the other is the high density residential retail section in Plainsboro. And Plainsboro is in love with this project. They think it's just a wonderful thing for Plainsboro. Nobody ever mentions that there's any contamination or any issues. And South Brunswick, while the word contamination came up, and the LSRP did give a couple comments during the planning board considerations. It really wasn't a big issue at all. They just kind of passed it on through. Everything is fine. This center is 341,000 square feet. And as I said, it was sold originally to Princeton University. So one of the neighbors litigated this remediation, but the three judge panel said, well, it seems to conform to the bill, to the act. So there's really nothing we can do about it. Go fish. Next. Okay, so there are a lot of environmental issues, and you might think that some of them are small, but a lot of times they're not near as small as you might think. First, there are these issues regarding the water, and the millstone is the major source of drinking water for central New Jersey. Then there's the noise and vibration issues, which you think that the neighbors probably can just learn to live with, but it's not so simple. According to consultants, it's right at the legal limit. So what to do if it goes over the limit? The neighbors will not be in a very good position if the thing is completed and goes into use. So if you've got these residences and these hotels right around it, you've got wetlands, you have air emissions from the generators. Now the generators are supposed to be backup generators, but we suspect these things are going to be used a lot. And not only are they tested regularly, PSE&G is going to be in a position of knocking them off the grid, or knocking the facility off the grid anytime they feel like it. And then they're supposed to use the generators. And they told us that they expect to have a tanker truck of diesel coming in every week. This is not something that's used occasionally for emergencies. This is something that they are planning on regularly. And they also told us that they are negotiating a better rate with PSE&G to have this circumstance. So whether you call it a time of day rate or any number of emergency rates, if it's knocked off the grid regularly, then you know, all of those emissions are going right up into the heavens. Okay, so you've got lighting impacts because people live right around it. You see, just on the top of the image there, triangular piece of land. Well, that somebody lives there, the Smiths, and they've been involved in quite a bit of litigation, and there are people living on either side of them and all that sort of thing. So this is surrounded by residences, oddly enough. So there are no requirements for using renewables to replace the diesel or anything creative, so-called creative. Next. So as I mentioned, dieldrin is the biggest issue, but there's also chlordane, which is a member of the DDT family. Both of them are synthetic forever chemicals. They're not going away. If the property is left undisturbed, they will bond to the soil and remain pretty inert. But if you have a bunch of construction going on, if you have a lot of stormwater passing through, then that's a different ballgame. So these things create all kinds of problems, cancer, all kinds of organ breakdown, liver problems, and all kinds of other dysfunctions. So they're not happy neighbors, these contaminants. Okay, next. So as I mentioned, there was remediation that was done by a company called Ransom, and they did all of the berming and capping and all that. Now, this whole application for the air permit, which I'll be bringing up, is for phase 1. But we have been told on the sly that there's going to be a phase 2. So how do you handle that? Because DEP apparently takes the notion, well, we only regulate what comes in on a piece of paper. So we don't speculate about what might be happening. We don't concern ourselves with that, which is really a problem. Next slide. So the regulatory reviews so far have been, the remediation, which has been pretty nil. An appeal that's being done by the Smiths of the planning board approval. And then the Sierra Club then challenged the DRCC approval. The DRCC represents that canal we're talking about. It's that 70-mile park, and it's owned by DEP, but regulated by the commission or protected. And so they needed an approval by the DRCC, so we went after that. And it was very unsatisfactory. And the commissioners decided that our concerns were no biggie. And they didn't focus on the issues with stormwater or anything else. We brought in a consultant, Princeton Hydro. They gave a very good presentation about what was wrong with the stormwater system, how it broke regulations and how it wouldn't work. And the commissioners paused and gave us a little more time and seemed initially interested. And then they said, oh, the hell with it, we'll pass it. It was almost as though something or somebody had gotten to them between the time that we gave our first presentation and the second time. So now our next issue is the air permit for the generators. And we're trying to hang our hat there. But DEP is taking the position so far that the application identifies these generators as separate source and that they are not connected and shouldn't be considered connected, even though we know that they will be used all at once. If they take the center off the grid, all these generators will go into action together. And so we think they should be considered a major source. So, what to do about that? We can ask for a hearing, which we're probably going to ask for, but we're still discussing, in which we lay our cards on the table. But that may not change anything because the DEP seems to have the habit of going back to the application. And if they feel that the application doesn't suggest a major source, they go for minor. Even if we are strongly suggesting that the application is full of mistruths, they don't seem to be very concerned about that. And
Kip,
so
can you start to wrap it up, please? We still have another speaker.
Yeah, so I think that's almost the last slide. Next. So this is the stormwater system that goes into Heathcote. Next. And then we have, these questions remaining that we're working on now. So I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Question?
Yeah, could I ask a brief, where's this place going to get its water from for all this cooling?
It's the chillers are air chillers they're not planning to use water. But, in phase two, maybe they will, because why are they right next to the Millstone River? Isn't that kind of a cozy arrangement? They could have located any other place. So even though they have no statements that they're using a lot of water, it appears as though that's a possibility for the future. That's the problem with these applications, and where the public can't really question the applications. They are taken at face value. And it's a little late to find out, 3 or 4 years down the road that they lied their head off and misconstrued. And there you have it. You're stuck.
Yep, thank
And
you
so-
for answering Howie's question. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go on to the last presentation. And unfortunately, our final speaker, Chris Kiel-Bialski, was called away unexpectedly. His presentation is about a proposed data center expansion in Orangetown, New York, where Chris is one of the neighbors living in Bergen County, New Jersey. DataBank, who is the owner, is pushing for a phase 2 despite a phase 1 condition that bars it. It would threaten Lake Tappan, a New Jersey Hackensack River watershed drinking water reservoir that serves northern New Jersey. It would destroy wetlands, drive up electric costs, take millions in tax breaks for only a few jobs. And Betsy Longendorfer has been active in the grassroots opposition, and so she will give Chris's talk. But Chris designed this talk to give himself.
Right, and I do want to thank Chris and Dave Rosen, who've done an amazing job at recruiting the public to come and speak about this. And we've had 40 and 50 people at their planning board meetings. So anyway, as you can see, one of the major problems is that residences right there where it says New Jersey, Chris's house is right there. And because all of the hearings and everything are being held in New York, people in New Jersey don't really have much in the way of representation. And that's a big problem. Let's see. Anyway, so you can see on this slide that phase 1 is already built. It somehow slipped under the radar, and then they said, "Oh, we want to build a phase 2, which is exactly like phase 1." And they said, "And by the way, you already proved phase 1, so what's the problem with phase 2?" So that was the initial argument. Some of the houses, like Chris's, are less than 100 feet from these diesel generators. Okay, next slide. And he kind of summarizes a lot of things that Kip had referred to. There's the drinking water from the Lake Tappan reservoir serves many towns in northern New Jersey. And of course, we're not in New York State, which is the one who has jurisdiction over approving this. And so that's a big risk. There are also eagles on this reservoir making nests. It's a class 1 or 2 wetlands, which is the most highly protected wetlands under state law due to flood control, water filtration, and ecological value. And right, so putting all of these things in a very sensitive area is a problem. Okay, next slide. And of course, we sort of beat to death the electric demand part, so I'll skip that, and the regional costs. Now, they are not in PJM. They're actually in New York ISO power grid. But of course, everyone in New York will suffer from that. And Orange and Rockland, which is the electric company there, also has a branch in New Jersey called Rockland Electric. So anyway, let's see. So despite all of these impacts, the project has received over $50 million in tax abatements while creating very few permanent jobs. In fact, they say they're going to have 10 employees, and that is very similar to what they have on the existing one. So the environmental damage and infrastructure burdens remain local while profits leave the community. This represents public risk for private gain. And yes, one of the issues is that some of the construction workers have appeared in support of this because, of course, they will have temporary jobs, but again, it's only temporary. Another issue is that the Rockland County Planning Board in New York unanimously rejected this proposal, finding that Phase 2 violates the conditions imposed on Phase 1. In particular, it fails to adequately protect the wetlands and water resources, and it places unacceptable strain on regional infrastructure. In fact, they did something called segmentation, where a legal concept called segmentation, where on Phase 1 they agreed that only so many, they wouldn't build anything because they were only going to have so many parking spaces. Or they would build the planned number of parking spaces, but in Phase 2 they said, "Oh, never mind. We're going to take those parking spaces that we said we'd make available, and we aren't going to make them available. We're going to build Phase 2 instead." So the town planning board is seeking to overrule the county planning board. One of the issues with that is because the town obviously has less expertise than the county does in dealing with these things. And of course, there's also a lot more local influence going on. They're less likely to take into account more regional people like New Jersey residents. Also, the lack of parking here means that pretty much no other use can ever be made of this building. Each of these buildings is about 140,000 square feet, and they don't have very many more than 10 parking spaces. So what else could you do with this? So in summary, this project threatens the region's most protected wetlands, a shared, I guess next slide for the summary. It threatens the region's most protected wetlands, a shared drinking water reservoir, and the cost of living for the families across New York and New Jersey while delivering minimal public benefit. So community engagement is essential to protecting these, and they have done an amazing job in bringing up websites, turning out residents, and speaking against them. So let's wish them luck. And I'm only 2 miles from there, so I will be affected as well.
Okay, I'm going to stop the share now. We have so many questions or comments in the chat. I don't even know where to start.
Yes, a lot of the questions were answered
Yeah, has
by Mike.
anybody
Thank you.
Has anybody else looked in the chat to see what's here? If someone has a question or a comment, they can raise their hand, and we'll let you ask it also. Jen Nelson said her electric bill was $825.
Has his hand raised, and so does Sasha. And I can't pronounce her last name, but we have some
Okay.
hands raised.
All right, Jeffrey, I think you were first.
Yeah, we've got a new governor, still a Democrat, coming in. Any inkling as to how the governor looks at the data center proliferation issue and self-sustaining electricity, or clean electricity generation?
I imagine she's been talking to Sierra Club people and others, and I imagine she knows what the situation is, but it's my personal opinion that it's the legislature that has to do something, and the governor signs whatever they pass. They failed to pass any data center bills this year, and there were several. Steve, you're on mute.
Oh. I understand one of the governor's advisors for transitioning was a member of the FERC uh, management organization, that federal organization that manages PJM. And I think that
And also
she's
Jennifer
gotten,
Granholm was on that same committee, who was the Secretary of Energy.
yeah, so I think she has plenty of input from higher level people. I don't know if she's heard any of these stories we're giving now. Maybe she should.
She did indicate she was going to do a freeze on the rate. And I don't think we've heard quite what that amounts to and whether she has authority or how that's going to work. The Sierra Club was represented by Angeli, our director, on the transition committee for energy. And but we're not clear on how much discussion and how far that's gone yet.
Next question is from Zasa, and I'm probably mispronouncing your name, which I apologize for.
That's okay. It's SAS Academy. I do have two questions. One belongs to someone else from Leland. They asked about that they just signed a 2-year contract with Clean Choice Energy for 19 cents per kilowatt hour. Are they protected from the rate increase? And part B to that is if you have solar, if you buy solar, are you protected? I mean, is there any way out of this? Because my bill is just unaffordable now. It's over $500 a month, and that was my first question. So, you want to answer that, and I'll ask my second question.
To check the contract to make sure it's not a variable rate contract, that it's a set fee at 19 cents. If it's a set fee in the contract, then you're protected by the contract. But a lot of contracts will have escalation factors in them in small print. So just go back and read the contract into what you sign. In terms of the best way to do this, community solar. You're going to get a 10-15% reduction if you can find a community solar project that you can sign up to. I think Pat and Steve are signed up. I have community solar. You can go to the BPU website and look up, find a community solar project and sign up. And they basically will get you a 10 to 15% reduction in your cost.
Thank you.
That's the quickest, easiest way to do that. And basically to go shopping, what you did, go out and look for a rate that someone can deliver electricity at a low rate. The problem is this is a PJM problem. So every state has the same costs that we're seeing in the same cost because we're all members of that capacity auction. We all see that capacity auction price. So you're going to see that roll through everything in PJM. So it's not just New Jersey. But if you do smart shopping, again, you can go to the BPU website. There's a website for shopping for electricity, and they will help you along to see if you can get a lower rate.
Thank you for answering that question, and I will do that. My second question has to do with what you just said. I was 15 minutes late, so I don't know what PJM is, but I understand that this is a nationwide issue, and it seems to me, and excuse me if I'm being naive, you did mention a lawsuit. It's very unfair that we're having corporate welfare yet again. These companies can afford to pay their own bills and their own utilities. And what do you see? Is there a nationwide lawsuit? Is it Sierra Club? This, how do you see this lawsuit going? And is it going to, do you think you will be able to make the case that it's unfair to put it on our backs when they are making billions of dollars on this stuff themselves?
So, New Jersey, this it definitely has to be some sort of federal response, but we're not going to see that. The states aren't voting members in PJM. It's electric utility companies, generators, transmission companies, and our ratepayer advocate have 1 vote out of 5. But all the states in PJM belong to an organization called OPSI, the Organization of PJM States Incorporated, and they have taken action against PJM. You might have seen the governor from Pennsylvania, Shapiro, sued. New Jersey joined in that suit, Delaware, Maryland, to try to put some caps on these prices, and they're actively trying to lower that cost and get things on the grid faster, get clean energy on the grid faster, get this thing again to connect batteries to existing solar. I won't go into all the nerdy details, but solar doesn't have 100% capacity factor. It has a lower capacity factor because it's variable. It's intermittent, as they call. So if
Yes,
you add batteries to that, you can get that entire capacity, and you don't have to go through the PJM queue to get reevaluated again. So there are options, and I know the governor-elect has been talking to the governors to see what they can do right out of the box with what's her name from Virginia, right? Spanberger, to try to address this issue on an interstate collective issue across the states. And we're going to hold her to doing that. So
yeah, I'm just bewildered how this even came to be, how they decided that this was okay to make us pay for their profit making data centers that nobody asked for or wanted. I mean, is that a stupid question? Does anybody have an answer to that? I'd really like to know how this came to be.
Well, one of the fixes that has been proposed is that we have a different rate structure. And the rate structure right now is that the people with the lowest usage pay the most. And there should be a special rate structure for the super high users like data centers. And right now there's nothing like that. They pay the same thing as business and industrial.
Wow. Thank you very much.
but not to, and that's important. But this is an issue in PJM on the capacity auction market, right? To get supply. So you can get data centers in Virginia. There are, I forget how many, there's probably 100 data centers in Virginia, 60 gigawatts of capacity. That spreads out throughout all of PJM. That, along with the data centers in New Jersey and Maryland and Delaware, are causing that collective demand and that collective need to deliver supply. So New Jersey can pass that bill, and that helps data centers pay their price in New Jersey, but it does nothing to those other states. It has to be a collective response by the governors, because it's not going to happen at the federal level. You're not going to get FERC to stand in against this administration. My opinion, FERC is independent, but there doesn't seem to be an independent organization in this administration. So it has to be the collective governors of this organization of OPSI, and you got to put pressure on them collectively to take this issue to PJM and to lower that cost and get what Betsy said, a lot of these clean energy systems that are sitting in the queue, get them through the queue faster. Get storage and wind and solar. PJM is doing something right. They joined the lawsuit against the federal government for stopping the offshore wind projects. So that's PJM saying we need that capacity to lower your cost. So they're turning it back on the federal government and saying, hey, you guys are the problem. You're stopping this capacity. This capacity will help us lower the price for everybody. And so we'll see how that lawsuit was, I think, said they get those offshore wind projects can go forward with their funding. So that's a pretty good step in the right direction.
Thank you.
There's a question about the forecasts of data centers in different areas and what can be done to mitigate that problem. And the issue is, and I think a couple of the speakers mentioned the transparency. There's a total lack of transparency, and the data centers go to the utilities and to, well, to the areas where they want to build, and then they try to make a deal with them, and then they go to the utilities and give them their forecast, and there are non-disclosure agreements. So nobody knows what's happening anywhere else. And that's why there could be duplication. We don't know that there is, but there very well could be.
Well, one of the proposals there is to, if you want to be in the queue, you have to put down a certain amount of money, and you have to guarantee that you're going to buy this energy for, I don't know, 10 years or something. So that would discourage the duplication, because you wouldn't put that kind of a deposit down in multiple places. So that's one of the proposals.
I have 8:18 right now, and we usually stop at 8:15. There are so many comments and questions in the chat. We're not going to be able to get through those, I'm sure, but if someone has a question or a comment that they want to be heard, I wish you'd hold your hand, or just come on and say it if you want to. Unmute yourself.
We're recording this so we can record the whole evening as long as we wish. That might help for the people who have to leave.
This is Greg Gorman. I don't have any questions, but I put in the chat links to 2 articles that are technology developments in the AI field are addressing reducing energy demand and water usage. One is MIT coming up with a stacked chip technology, and the other one is NVIDIA coming up with an alternative way to cool the system using hot water, to eliminate the chillers that as Steve talked about in his presentation.
Well, there was also that DeepSeek announcement from China that said that they could use a lot less energy to do AI. I think, having been a computer engineer for many years, we see technologies come in and they vastly improve over time. And so maybe the forecast will actually be, maybe the curve on that forecast is less than it is. So yes, there are factors coming along like that, but we just don't know how quickly.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a little lost. As having no particular expertise in this area whatsoever, what can you summarize what can be done at this point? What by organizations, by individuals to press first the legislature, our new governor, and excuse me, state agencies to rein in the data centers, particularly as they cause the skyrocketing rates. I've heard a lot of suggestions, but I don't know what the action is.
So the Sierra Club, and Rich Isaac, thank you for passing me this document this afternoon. So it's hot off the presses. The Sierra Club has a policy document, and Steve Miller referred to it, and I dropped the link in the chat while he was there. You could take a look at that, and it's got a summary of actions. So that's a good starting point.
And how do I find that, or how do we find that?
The link is in the chat. So let me.
Okay.
Here's when I send out the recording links to recording slides and whatnot, I'll send out the link, probably like a page that is all of the links to other information. So you'll have that probably by this weekend.
And Steve and whoever else can answer this, not we don't have each one of us don't have a lot of time to lobby. I mean, what's the most critical thing that we can do at this point?
I from a personal point of view, I think our best bet is to write and communicate to people who are trying to help. Representative Rob Menendez Jr. Reported 2 days ago that he's introducing new bills in Congress to force data centers to self-generate electricity, meet aggressive renewable targets, report water use and whatnot. And so that bill could be, per the things that we just laid out today earlier, that bill could be modified so that it contained the hot things that we care about.
This is federal legislation. I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is federal.
And
there are four, right? So on a state level as well. So I in fact I left a message today with his office to ask for some people to attend tonight. I don't know if they did.
Do you have the House bill on that?
No, he hasn't introduced it yet. Not yet.
Oh, okay.
Now there's also bills in New Jersey that we can influence. There's one that was that I mentioned was approved by the Senate Appropriations Committee Friday of last week, and I think I have that, or I'll put that link into the summary of possible links. We can influence that bill as well. I view that as part of what is required in a bigger picture. In the case of Oregon, they introduced and passed one bill, which will be the first of a suite of bills that will solve their data center problems. We could do that here in New Jersey as well. There's actually several other bills in New Jersey that have been introduced over the last few months. I think there's one actually was passed a year ago, and it's regarding reporting requirements.
But the main one that we were lobbying for was the bring your own clean energy for data centers, and that one didn't go anywhere. I'm sure it will be reintroduced in this the next session of the legislature.
What Pat and I do is lobby on occasion, and we're there probably every month. And if we have hot bills, we would ask people to help support this. And the way to do that is to write your representative and senator in New Jersey, or same on the federal level, but I think you have less chance on federal. But in state, I think we have a chance of making an impact.
Howie has his hand up.
Don, and first of all, you have to get with your local mayor, town council, and explain to them that this is not a sweetheart deal where the town gets lots of money and it doesn't cost them anything. You have to explain that it will cost them in their own electric bills, as well as costing them in pollution from their backup generators, as well as the noise and heat, and it's not going to add any meaningful number of employees. It doesn't take a whole lot of people to watch a computer do its thing. That's
Howie, you're saying approach town officials. You're talking about town officials where there's an application for a data center?
Well, that would be the first step, especially if you don't want them in Leonardo or someplace close to you. Next, you go to the county, and of course, you have 3 state legislators that you can pick on. You have 2 assemblymen and a state senator, and they have offices in Cape May County, and grab them. gently around the neck and squeeze to get their attention. Not doing this, there's a thing that municipal governments seem to believe, that all development is good because it just brings more money into the municipal coffers. And you and I both know that that's not right. And you got to get up there and yell and scream. Sierra Club and I have joined them in Trenton. That's not my flavor. I would recommend that you go to the local, make an appointment with the local legislators who cover your part of the world, and let them know how you feel, and that it's not going to raise any revenue for the county or for the municipality, and is just going to create environmental grief.
Rich, you have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. Just real fast, near the bottom of the chat, I put in Sierra Club policies regarding data centers, and right underneath that, you've got the link. So if anyone's interested in Sierra Club's policies on data centers, the link is very close to the bottom of the chat. Thank you.
What we'll do when we send out the material from tonight's meeting, we can summarize the bills and tell you what bills are active in New Jersey. And then you can, and maybe in the future, maybe you could have a mailing list where you could help out with supporting certain things.
The last question in the chat is, would designing solar on the roofs be enough energy to run the data centers? I was thinking putting on the roofs of everybody in New Jersey. Maybe we would have enough to run the data centers, but
a data center could use as much power as a whole city.
Megawatts, gigawatts.
Gigawatts, a lot of power.
But Pat raised a very important thing. There is a new issue that's sort of rolling out in FERC, and that's the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, which was approved in the end of the Biden administration. It would allow distributive solar, the solar you have on your roof, to play into the PJM market, to have an aggregator aggregate all of that capacity and bid that into the market. This is what's happening in Australia, and they're changing the way that grid is managed. And you hear people in Australia around the barbecue saying, hey, I just bid 10 kilowatts into the market and got $200. And it makes PJM a lot real. Probably most of the people on this call didn't know what PJM was until we started talking about it. But the more you can play in the market and start to understand how all of this works at your level, at solar on your roof, at batteries, with EVs, the more you'll be able to take more control over that sort of structure, and it becomes distributive at a very local level. It's called FERC Order 2222, and it's called Distributive Energy Resource Aggregation. And it's something that's starting to roll out. The Board of Public Utilities is looking with the utilities. How would I set that up? How would I check to make sure you can't net meter and then bid into the market? You can't get paid twice. But now you can put twice as much solar on your roof, net meter half of it, put the rest into the market and get paid whatever, especially at peak, especially solar at peak, which is where all of this cost is coming from. As Betsy said, you have to pay for that peak. So that's something to look out for and to see, as Pat and Steve said, and Rich, you gotta lobby for these things to move forward. Otherwise, we're going to get stuck with large central power plants, nuclear power plants, natural gas power plants. Why? Because financing entities make a lot of money in doing that. They don't make a lot of money with putting solar on your roof, with putting tens of thousands of solar on your roof. to bid into the market. That's just not what they do. But that's where the power is. So my 2 cents.
For whatever it's worth, a New Jersey SREC is now slightly more than what I would be paying for a kilowatt hour of electricity, but that floats up and down, and so I'm not so sure that selling it into the grid for dollars would really be that much a better deal than the New Jersey SREC.
No, you would get.
Before we
Yeah.
close, I'll throw something in there. Our home, we have a 10 kilowatt solar system on our home. My October bill was 38 cents. My November bill was December bill was a $9 credit. At the end of the day, I'm trying to do the math real fast in my head. I'm probably making about $300 or $400 a year. My electricity is free. The way I looked at going solar, quite frankly, and I think it applies to all of us here, your electric bill is like your mortgage payment, but it never, ever goes away, ever. It only goes up. So what I said to my wife is, why don't we just take the money that we would send to the power company and send it to the bank and buy a solar system? And at some point, that bill just goes away. So if you look at it that way, it's never going away. And if enough people did it, it might make a difference. But for those, I'm hearing people say they have $500 electric bills, and I'm ready to have a stroke over here. There's a bet you could make much better use of that $500. I would encourage you to talk to. I saw someone put in the chat at least 2 or 3 quotes, and do the math for yourself and see if it makes sense. That's all I have to say. I know we've been on a long time. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
6
Can
months.
I just ask the gentleman who was who a trusted installer is, because there's a lot of lawsuits flying around, so I'm afraid to make a move to do that, to have that installed.
I'll tell you who I used. I've used them twice actually over the years. It's a small company called Seabright Solar. I got 3 quotes. They were kind of right in the middle. The craftsmanship was outstanding. They were in and out in a day, 2 days. And I'm very happy with it.
Amazing. And up and running in short time, huh?
Oh yeah, very quick.
Thank you so much.
And you know what? Don't when you're thinking about it, don't be intimidated. What I mean by don't be intimidated is you don't necessarily have to replace 100% of your power. It might be cheaper to buy a few high efficiency appliances and shrink the size of your system. Just do the math. And even if you only maybe you offset a third of your power, you're still saving money. So work responsibly, talk to a few different people. But Seabright Solar's been around for probably 20 years, and I do have one fear, which I think we all should have for the solar industry, is that it could collapse with what's going on with all the federal funding that dried up. But I'll leave it at that. I know we've been on a long time. Thank you.
Real quick, my system is smaller than Stan's, and I pay typically $6 a month, and that's the service charge that PSE&G insists on collecting for reading the meter. And that's for 11 months a year, and 1 month we wind up using up all of the, it's going to be this month, and I'll cost $15 or $20 for that month. Go check them out. Don't just take a quote and run, and don't deal with somebody who wants to sell you or lease you something. See what it is to buy it outright, because the lease deals you need to be a CPA to keep up with the nonsense in the lease deals.
And who did you use, if Howie?
Unfortunately, it's now 14 years ago and I've forgotten the guy's name.
Thank you, though, for
There is a website that a lot of people use called Energy Save. Energy Sage, SAGE, and they will look at your location and identify, I think, a few solar contractors. And if you get several bids, then you can compare them.